Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sleepless Campfire. Tonight, we travel into the forgotten backroads of America, places where light fades, and what remains are stories that refuse to die. Our journey takes us to the vast expanse of Navajo Nation, where highway patrol officers serve as the thin blue line between civilization and the mysteries that dwell in the desert darkness. Across these hills, rivers, and empty towns are accounts drawn from witness reports, police files, and archived broadcasts. Each one verified, recorded, and retold in their own words. The Navajo Highway Patrol has documented incidents that defy explanation, encounters that leave even the most seasoned officers questioning what they thought they knew about the world. The desert landscape holds ancient secrets, and the endless miles of highway that cut through this territory have witnessed things that cannot be easily categorized or dismissed. From strange lights to impossible encounters, these stories represent the thin veil between our world and something else, something that patrols the darkness just as the officers do. Now, let us begin with our first story. It was late November of 2014 when Officer Michael Begay first encountered what would become known as the Shadow Walker along Highway 264. The night was particularly cold for the high desert, with temperatures dropping into the low 20s as a bitter wind swept across the plateau. Begay had been with the Navajo Nation Police Department for 7 years, patrolling the same stretch of road between Window Rock and Ganado countless times. Nothing about that evening seemed unusual as he began his shift at 10 p.m., the dashboard lights casting a pale glow across his weathered face. The highway was nearly empty, as it usually was after midnight. Begay had made the routine traffic stop at mile marker 27, assisting a motorist whose car had overheated. The encounter was unremarkable, a simple call of service that ended with the driver waiting for a tow truck. As Begay continued his patrol, the desolate landscape stretched before him, illuminated only by his headlights and the occasional distant ranch light. The radio crackled intermittently with routine dispatch calls, the familiar sounds that had become the soundtrack to his nights on duty. At approximately 1:17 a.m., while approaching the turnoff to Klashgato, Altarske, Begay noticed something unusual on the shoulder of the road. What appeared to be a figure stood motionless in the darkness, barely visible in the periphery of his headlights. As he drew closer, he could see it was tall, unnaturally so, and seemed to be dressed in dark clothing that blended with the night. Begay slowed his vehicle, assuming it might be a stranded motorist or someone experiencing car trouble. He activated his spotlight, sweeping the beam across the area where the figure had stood, but found nothing. The shoulder was empty, with only scrub brush and desert plants moving in the wind. Begay radioed dispatch to report the sighting, though he felt slightly foolish describing a figure that had seemingly vanished into thin air. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I had a visual on what appeared to be a subject at mile marker 34, northbound shoulder. Subject is no longer visible. The dispatcher's response was routine. Copy that, Unit 47. Will you be investigating? Begay decided to pull over, thinking perhaps the person had moved into the desert to relieve themselves or was hiding for some reason. As he stepped out of his patrol car, the cold air bit at his exposed skin, and he zipped his jacket higher around his neck. The desert silence was profound, broken only by the wind and the distant hum of his idling engine. Begay swept his flashlight across the area, its powerful beam cutting through the darkness. The ground was undisturbed, no footprints, no signs of recent passage. It was as if no one had been there at all. Yet Begay couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a sensation that prickled the hairs on his arms despite the cold. He returned to his vehicle, documenting the incident in his logbook as unidentified subject, possible visual misinterpretation due to fatigue. 3 nights later, Officer Begay was again patrolling the same stretch of highway when he saw it again, this time more clearly. The tall figure stood just beyond the shoulder, partially obscured by the darkness. As his headlight swept across it, Begay could see that it was impossibly tall, perhaps 7 or 8 feet in height, with proportions that seemed wrong, somehow elongated. Most disturbing was how it moved, not walking, but gliding slightly above the ground, its feet never seeming to touch the earth. Begay felt a cold dread wash over him, unlike anything he had experienced in his years of law enforcement. This time, he didn't radio dispatch immediately. Instead, he slowed his vehicle to a crawl, watching as the figure moved parallel to the highway, keeping pace with his car despite his reduced speed. The entity, for that's what it seemed to be, remained just at the edge of his headlights. Never fully illuminated, never quite clear. Begay noticed something else. The figure cast no shadow, despite being illuminated by his lights. It was as if the darkness itself had taken form and was now keeping pace with him, a silent companion on his lonely patrol. After following him for nearly a mile, the figure suddenly stopped and turned to face Begay's vehicle directly. In that moment, Begay felt an overwhelming sense of dread, a primal fear that made his hands tremble on the steering wheel. He accelerated, not caring about speed limits or protocol, needing only to put distance between himself and whatever stood on the roadside. In his rearview mirror, he watched as the figure remained motionless, a tall, dark shape against the desert night, before it slowly dissolved into the darkness as if it had never been there at all. Begay reported the encounter to his supervisor the next day, requesting documentation of the incident despite his concern about how it might be perceived. Sergeant Thomas Yazzie, a 20-year veteran of the force, listened without judgment as Begay recounted both sightings. When Begay finished, Yazzie was silent for a moment before speaking. "My grandfather used to tell stories about the shadow walkers," he said quietly. "Beings that patrol the highways at night, looking for something. He said they're harmless unless you acknowledge them directly. Did you speak to it?" Begay shook his head. "Good," Yazzie replied. "Don't." The official incident report, filed on November 24, 2014, describes unidentified visual phenomena of unknown origin, and notes that Officer Begay was in sound mental and physical condition at the time of the sightings. The report remains in the Navajo Nation Police Department's unsolved files, accessible only to senior officers. Begay continued his patrols for another 2 years before requesting a transfer to administrative duties, citing stress-related concerns. In his exit interview, he mentioned only that, "Some nights on the highway, you see things that make you question what's real and what isn't." Other officers have reported similar sightings over the years, though most remain undocumented in official files. The Shadow Walker of Highway 264 has become something of a legend among the Navajo Nation Police. A cautionary tale whispered among new recruits during their training. Most experienced officers have learned to avoid that particular stretch of road during the midnight hours, choosing alternative routes whenever possible. They say that sometimes, on the darkest nights, if you look closely at the edge of your headlights, you might see it too, a tall, dark figure with no shadow, keeping pace with your vehicle, waiting to be acknowledged. No trace of the Shadow Walker has ever been found, though many continue to look. Officer Jessica Tso had been with the Navajo Nation Police Department for just under a year when she encountered what would become the most unsettling experience of her career. It was March 2016, and the desert spring had brought unseasonable rain to the region, turning the normally dry landscape into a mosaic of muted greens and browns. Tso was assigned to the night shift, patrolling the remote sections of Highway 191 that connected the small communities of Burnside and Sanders. The route was known among officers as the Long Silence, due to the vast stretches without radio contact or civilization. The evening began routinely enough. Tso completed her vehicle inspection, logged her equipment, and received her briefing from the day shift supervisor. The radio frequencies were functioning normally, with clear communication between dispatch and units. Her first few hours on duty were uneventful: a traffic violation for a broken taillight, a welfare check on an elderly resident whose family hadn't heard from in 2 days. The resident was fine, merely without electricity due to the storms, and a response to a minor fender bender at the intersection with Route 61. By midnight, the rain had subsided, leaving behind glistening roads and the scent of wet earth. At approximately 2:33 a.m., while patrolling the desolate stretch between mile markers 412 and 418, Tso's radio crackled with an unfamiliar voice. The transmission was faint, as if coming from a great distance, yet somehow clear despite the static. "Officer down," the voice said, calm and measured. "Repeat, officer down. Highway 191 near the old trading post. Need immediate assistance." Tso immediately grabbed her radio, responding, "Dispatch, Unit 23. Did you copy that transmission? Officer down near the old trading post?" There was silence for a moment before the dispatcher's voice came through, clear and concerned. "Negative, Unit 23. No transmission received here. Are you certain about what you heard?" Tso confirmed what she had heard, describing the voice as male, calm, and authoritative, similar to how a senior officer might sound in an emergency situation. Dispatch advised her to proceed with caution to the location mentioned, approximately 3 miles ahead of her current position. As she drove, Tso felt a growing sense of unease. The old trading post had been abandoned for decades, little more than a crumbling structure barely visible from the highway. It was an unlikely location for any police activity, let alone an officer-involved incident. When Tso arrived at the designated area, she found nothing. No vehicles, no signs of struggle, no indication that any law enforcement personnel had been there recently. She performed a thorough search of the area, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing only decay and neglect. The trading post stood silhouetted against the night sky, its windows like vacant eyes. Tso radioed dispatch again. "Dispatch, Unit 23. I'm at the old trading post. No signs of any officer or emergency situation. All clear here." The dispatcher's response was immediate. "Copy that, Unit 23. All units accounted for. No reports of any officer in distress." As Tso prepared to leave the area, her radio crackled again with the same mysterious voice. "They're watching you," it said, still calm and measured. "Look to your left, up the ridge." Tso's heart raced as she turned her gaze to the dark mesa that rose beside the highway. Her flashlight beam swept across the rocky face, revealing nothing unusual. "Who is this?" "Identify yourself," Tso demanded into her radio. The response sent a chill down her spine. "I am the one who came before, the one who patrols this road when you are gone." Tso called for backup, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. 2 additional units arrived within 15 minutes, finding nothing unusual except for Tso's heightened state of alert. Her fellow officers, both veterans with years of experience on this stretch of highway, listened as she recounted the radio transmissions. Sergeant Robert Charlie, a 20-year veteran of the force, suggested they check the radio equipment for malfunctions or possible interference. A thorough inspection revealed no technical issues with Tso's vehicle or radio system. The incident was documented in report number 160472, with Tso providing a detailed account of the transmissions and her subsequent actions. What makes this case particularly disturbing is that the radio communications were recorded by dispatch. Though the mysterious voice was not audible on the official recording, only Tso's side of the conversations could be heard. Audio experts later examined the recording and found no evidence of tampering or technical glitches that could explain the phenomenon. In the weeks that followed, Tso experienced several more unusual radio transmissions while patrolling the same stretch of highway. The voice, always calm and measured, would sometimes offer warnings about road conditions ahead that proved to be accurate, despite no prior knowledge of these hazards. Other times, it would speak in the Navajo language, though Tso, who was not fluent, could only catch occasional words that seemed to relate to safety or caution. The most unsettling transmission occurred on April 15, 2016, when the voice said, "Tomorrow at 1743, near mile marker 416, there will be an accident. A family in a blue sedan. Be ready." Tso documented this prediction in her logbook, though she remained skeptical. The following day, at precisely 5:43 p.m., a call came in about a single vehicle accident involving a blue sedan carrying a family of 4 at mile marker 416. The vehicle had hydroplaned on the wet road and rolled into an embankment. Thanks to Tso's unusual warning, emergency services were dispatched immediately, and all family members survived with minor injuries. The incident report notes that Officer Tso arrived at the scene with unusual speed and prior knowledge of the accident's location and nature. When questioned by her supervisor about how she knew about the accident before it was reported, Tso could only reference the mysterious radio transmissions. The official explanation in the report suggests possible cross-frequency interference with emergency services in adjacent jurisdictions, though no evidence of such interference was ever found. Tso continued to receive the mysterious transmissions for another month before they abruptly ceased. Her final documented encounter occurred on May 22, 2016, when the voice said simply, "Your watch is over. Another will take your place." 2 days later, Officer Daniel Benally, newly transferred to the district, reported receiving a strange transmission on his first night patrolling Highway 191, a calm, measured voice warning him about debris on the road ahead that was indeed there, despite no prior reports. The phenomenon has become part of the unofficial history of the Navajo Nation Police Department, with some officers referring to it as the guardian of 191. Veteran officers speak of it in hushed tones, acknowledging its existence while maintaining professional skepticism in official reports. New recruits sometimes hear stories during their training, though most dismiss them as campfire tales until they experience something similar themselves. Officer Tso remained with the department for another year before requesting a transfer to the Criminal Investigations Division, where she wouldn't be assigned to patrol duties. In her transfer request, she cited only a desire for professional development. Though in private conversations with trusted colleagues, she admitted that the nightly uncertainty of what she might hear on the radio had become too stressful to endure. The voice on Highway 191 continues to be heard by select officers, always calm, always helpful, always mysterious. Some believe it's the spirit of an officer who died on that highway decades ago, while others suggest it might be something else entirely, something that patrols the radio frequencies as faithfully as the officers patrol the roads. No definitive explanation has ever been documented in official files. It was the evening of August 8, 2017, when Officer Darren Nez encountered what would become one of the most perplexing cases of his 12-year career with the Navajo Nation Police Department. The summer monsoon season had arrived late that year, bringing with it the typical afternoon thunderstorms that left the air heavy with moisture and the scent of desert rain. Nez was assigned to the overnight shift on Highway 160, the east-west corridor that connects Tuba City with Kayenta. This particular stretch of road, known for its beautiful red rock formations and vast open spaces, was also notorious for traffic accidents and stranded motorists. Nez began his shift at 10 p.m., following his usual routine of vehicle inspection and equipment check. The night was unseasonably humid, with occasional flashes of lightning illuminating the distant mesas. His first few hours on duty were relatively quiet, a minor traffic stop for speeding, a response to a domestic disturbance in a small community off the main highway, and a welfare check on some cattle that had wandered onto the road. By 1 a.m., the traffic had dwindled to almost nothing, leaving Nez alone with his thoughts and the rhythmic sound of his tires on the wet pavement. At approximately 2:15 a.m., while driving eastbound near mile marker 325, Nez noticed a figure standing on the shoulder of the road, thumb outstretched in the universal gesture of a hitchhiker. As he drew closer, he could see it was a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, wearing what appeared to be a light-colored dress that was soaked from the rain. She had no umbrella or jacket and seemed to be shivering in the cool night air. Nez slowed his vehicle, concerned for her safety in such a remote location. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Nez asked through his passenger window as he pulled alongside her. The woman turned to face him, and Nez was struck by how pale she appeared, almost translucent in the dim light of his dashboard. "I need to get to Kayenta," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My car broke down a few miles back." Nez noted that she had no purse or cell phone visible, and her clothing seemed inappropriate for the weather conditions, a simple summer dress despite the cool temperatures. "Let me call for a tow truck for your vehicle," Nez offered, reaching for his radio. The woman shook her head. "There's no time," she said, her voice urgent now. "Please, just take me to Kayenta. I'll explain on the way." Nez hesitated for a moment, considering protocol. Transporting civilians was generally discouraged, except in emergency situations. However, the woman seemed genuinely distressed, and leaving her alone on the highway in these conditions didn't sit right with him. "All right," Nez said finally. "Get in." The woman quickly moved to the passenger side and slid into the seat, closing the door with a soft click. As she settled into the seat, Nez noticed something odd. She didn't seem to be dripping water onto the upholstery despite being soaked from the rain. He dismissed this as a minor detail, focusing instead on getting her to safety. "What's your name?" he asked as he pulled back onto the highway. "Sarah," she replied quietly. "Sarah Yazzie." As they drove east toward Kayenta, Nez attempted to make conversation, but Sarah remained mostly silent, offering only brief responses to his questions. She seemed distracted, frequently glancing at the dark landscape outside as if searching for something. The radio remained quiet, except for the occasional static burst, and the only sounds in the vehicle were the hum of the engine and the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers. Nez found himself growing increasingly uncomfortable in the woman's presence, though he couldn't quite identify why. About 10 miles into their journey, Nez noticed that the interior lights of his vehicle began to flicker intermittently. At first, he attributed it to possible electrical issues, but when he glanced at the dashboard, all systems appeared normal. The flickering seemed to coincide with moments when Sarah shifted in her seat or moved her hands. "Is everything okay?" Nez asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Sarah turned to look at him, and in that moment, Nez felt a cold dread wash over him. Her eyes seemed to hold an ancient sadness, a depth of emotion that seemed impossible for someone so young. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said, her voice suddenly clear and strong, no longer the barely audible whisper from before. "I'm not going to make it to Kayenta." Nez felt a chill run down his spine, despite the warm, humid air in the vehicle. "What do you mean?" he asked, though he wasn't certain he wanted to know the answer. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Instead, she pointed toward a bend in the road ahead. "There," she said. "That's where it happened." As they approached the area she indicated, Nez saw what appeared to be the remnants of a vehicle off the side of the road, a mangled frame barely visible in the darkness. He slowed down, intending to investigate. But Sarah spoke again. "Don't stop," she said, her voice urgent. "Just keep driving. But remember this place." Nez continued forward, his eyes occasionally glancing at the passenger seat beside him. Something about Sarah seemed different now, less substantial, somehow more transparent than before. "Who are you?" Nez asked, his professional demeanor giving way to genuine curiosity and fear. Sarah turned to face him fully, and in that moment, Nez realized with a shock that he could see the passenger seat headrest through her form. "I died here 2 years ago," she said calmly. "On this night, August 8th, my car skidded on the wet road and crashed into that ravine. I was trying to get home to Kayenta to see my family." Nez felt his heart racing, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing and seeing. "I've been waiting for someone to stop for me," Sarah continued, her form becoming increasingly transparent. "Someone who could help me pass on a message to my family. Tell them I'm okay. Tell them I'm not in pain anymore." Nez could barely breathe, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. "What's the message?" he managed to ask. "Tell them I love them," Sarah said, her voice now barely audible again, "and that I'm sorry I missed my brother's wedding." As Nez watched in disbelief, Sarah's form slowly faded away, like mist dispersing in the morning sun. One moment she was there, a sad but beautiful young woman with a message for her family. The next, only an empty passenger seat remained. Nez pulled his vehicle to the side of the road, his heart pounding, his mind racing to make sense of what had just happened. He sat there for several minutes, collecting his thoughts, before calling dispatch to report a suspicious incident and requesting that another unit meet him at his location. When Officer Marcus Talls arrived, he found Nez sitting in his patrol car, pale and shaken. Nez recounted the experience, expecting skepticism or disbelief. Instead, Talls listened intently, his expression growing somber as Nez spoke. When Nez finished, Talls was quiet for a moment before speaking. "There was a fatal accident here 2 years ago tonight," he said quietly. "A young woman named Sarah Yazzie. She was on her way to her brother's wedding in Kayenta when her car went off the road. By the time emergency services arrived, it was too late." The official incident report, filed on August 8, 2017, describes the encounter in carefully neutral language. Officer Nez reports picking up an unidentified female hitchhiker at approximately 2:15 a.m. near mile marker 325. The subject identified herself as Sarah Yazzie and requested transport to Kayenta. En route, the subject disappeared from the vehicle under unexplained circumstances. The report notes that subsequent investigation confirmed that a woman named Sarah Yazzie had indeed died in a vehicle accident at that location 2 years prior, on the same date. Nez followed through on his promise to deliver Sarah's message. The next day, he visited the Yazzie family in Kayenta, carefully explaining how he had come to know of their daughter's final words. The family, who had maintained traditional Navajo beliefs, accepted his story without question or skepticism. Sarah's mother wept quietly as Nez relayed the message, while her father nodded solemnly. "We knew she was still out there," Sarah's mother said. "We felt her presence sometimes, especially on the anniversary of her passing. In the years since that encounter, other officers have reported seeing a young woman hitchhiking along that stretch of Highway 160 on the anniversary of Sarah's death. Most who stop for her report similar experiences: a quiet ride, a sad story, and a sudden disappearance as they approach the site of her accident. The Navajo Nation Police Department has never officially acknowledged these encounters, though they have become part of the oral tradition among officers who patrol that route. Officer Nez remained with the department for 3 more years before retiring early. In his exit interview, he cited only personal reasons for his decision, though in private conversations with colleagues, he admitted that the experience had changed him profoundly. "I see things differently now," he told a fellow officer shortly before his retirement. "There's more to this world than what we can see and touch. Some nights, when I'm driving alone, I still look for her, hoping she's found peace." The vanishing hitchhiker of Highway 160 continues to appear on the anniversary of her death, a reminder that some journeys never truly end, and that some messages are important enough to transcend the boundary between life and death. No official explanation has ever been documented for the phenomenon, though many who have experienced it carry the memory with them always. The incident that would later be documented as Case File 18-942 began on a frigid January night in 2018. Officer Kevin Chi was nearing the end of his shift on Highway 491, the north-south corridor that runs through the western portion of the Navajo Nation. The winter had been particularly harsh that year, with temperatures dropping well below freezing and occasional snowstorms that made driving treacherous. Chi, a 10-year veteran of the Navajo Nation Police Department, was familiar with the challenges of winter patrol in this region. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he would encounter that night. At approximately 4:52 a.m., Chi was driving southbound near mile marker 28 when his headlights caught something unusual on the shoulder ahead, a vehicle that appeared to be parked at an odd angle, partially off the road. As he drew closer, he could see it was a late-model sedan, dark in color, with no visible lights or signs of activity. Given the early hour and freezing temperatures, Chi's training and experience told him this could be a situation involving a disabled motorist, a medical emergency, or potentially something more serious. He approached with caution, parking his patrol vehicle behind the sedan at a safe distance. The first thing Chi noticed as he exited his vehicle was the strange silence that surrounded the scene. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, creating an unnatural stillness that felt heavy and oppressive. The sedan's engine was cold to the touch when he placed his hand on the hood, indicating it had been parked for some time. All 4 doors were closed and the windows were intact, with no signs of damage or forced entry. Chi swept his flashlight beam across the vehicle's interior, finding it empty: no driver, no passengers, no personal items visible on the seats or floor. Chi ran the license plate through his system, discovering that the vehicle was registered to a residence in Shiprock, approximately 20 miles north of his current location. A quick check with dispatch revealed no reported stolen vehicles matching this description, and no missing persons reports that might be connected to the abandoned car. Chi documented the vehicle's condition and location, noting the unexplained absence of its owner or occupants. Standard procedure would be to have the vehicle towed, but something about this situation felt wrong to Chi, a gut feeling born of years of experience that told him there was more to this than a simple abandoned car. As Chi continued his investigation, he noticed something odd about the ground around the vehicle. Despite the recent snowfall, there were no footprints leading to or from the car. Only the tire tracks that showed it had pulled off the road and stopped. The snow around the vehicle was undisturbed, as if the car had materialized in this location rather than being driven there. Chi knelt down for a closer examination, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. The ground was frozen hard, making it difficult to determine much from the limited evidence available. Chi called for backup, requesting that Officer Lucy Tso meet him at the location. While waiting for her to arrive, he continued his examination of the scene, finding nothing that might explain the vehicle's presence or the mysterious absence of its driver. The car was unlocked, though Chi found nothing unusual inside: no registration papers, no insurance information, no personal items whatsoever. It was as if the vehicle had been professionally cleaned before being abandoned, though this seemed unlikely given the circumstances. When Officer Tso arrived approximately 15 minutes later, she immediately sensed that something was amiss. "This doesn't feel right," she said, her voice low as she surveyed the scene. "I've seen plenty of abandoned vehicles in my time, but this one's different." Tso, who had been with the department for 8 years, had developed a keen sense for situations that defied any easy explanation. Together, the two officers conducted a more thorough search of the area, expanding their radius to include the desert landscape on both sides of the highway. It was Tso who first noticed the strange marks in the snow about 50 yards from the vehicle, not footprints, but something else entirely. They appeared to be drag marks, as if something heavy had been pulled across the frozen ground, though the marks were unusual in their pattern and spacing. "What do you make of these?" Tso asked, pointing her flashlight beam at the evidence. Chi knelt down for a closer look, his brow furrowed in concentration. The marks were unlike anything he had seen before, too wide for a single person, too irregular for typical animal tracks, and too deep to have been made by something light. The officers followed the drag marks for approximately 200 yards into the desert, where they abruptly ended at a rocky outcropping. There was no indication of what had made the marks or where it might have gone from there. The snow around the ending point was undisturbed, creating the impression that whatever had made the tracks had simply vanished into thin air. Chi and Tso exchanged glances, both recognizing the unsettling nature of their discovery. As the first light of dawn began to illuminate the eastern horizon, the officers decided to have the vehicle towed to the impound lot for further examination. A thorough search of the sedan's interior and trunk revealed nothing unusual. No personal items, no identification, no clues as to who might have been driving it or why it had been abandoned. The vehicle's VIN number matched the registration, confirming it belonged to the Shiprock resident, though attempts to contact the registered owner proved unsuccessful. The official investigation continued over the following days. Officers visited the address listed on the registration, finding the house empty with signs of a hasty departure. Neighbors reported that the family who lived there, a couple in their early 30s with 2 young children, had left suddenly about a week earlier, giving no explanation for their departure. According to the neighbors, the family had seemed normal in the days leading up to their disappearance, with no indication of financial problems, marital issues, or other concerns that might explain their sudden absence. A check of the family's background revealed nothing unusual. No criminal history, no financial difficulties, no known enemies. The couple were described by co-workers and acquaintances as quiet but friendly people who kept mostly to themselves. Their children, ages 5 and 7, were enrolled in the local elementary school and had attended classes regularly until the day before their parents' disappearance. School officials reported that the children had been picked up by their mother at the usual time, with nothing out of the ordinary noted in their behavior or appearance. The case was officially classified as a missing persons investigation, though detectives had few leads to follow. The abandoned vehicle remained the only physical evidence, and despite thorough forensic examination, it yielded no clues, no fingerprints other than those of the registered owners, no DNA evidence, no signs of struggle or foul play. The vehicle's GPS history showed it had driven from Shiprock to the location where it was found, but the final entry was incomplete, ending abruptly at 4:28 a.m. On the morning, it was discovered by Officer Chi. In the months that followed, the case grew cold. The family was never found, and no definitive explanation for their disappearance was ever documented. The abandoned vehicle was eventually released to the insurance company and destroyed, as per standard procedure when a vehicle remains unclaimed for an extended period. The drag marks found in the snow were photographed and documented, though forensic analysts could not determine what had made them or what they might signify. Officer Chi and Officer Tso both continued to patrol the same stretch of highway, though neither could shake the feeling of unease that the incident had left them with. Sometimes, when I drive past that spot at night, I feel like I'm being watched, Chi told a colleague during a late-night shift several months after the incident. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever happened there isn't over. Tso experienced similar sensations, occasionally hearing strange sounds, faint whispers, or indistinct voices when patrolling that area in the early morning hours. I've started taking a different route on my overnight shifts, she admitted to Chi during one of their shared breaks. I can't explain it, but that place feels wrong, like something happened there that we can't understand. The empty vehicle of Highway 491 became part of the unofficial lore of the Navajo Nation Police Department, a cautionary tale whispered among officers who worked the night shift. Some suggested the family had been victims of foul play, possibly abducted by criminals who then disposed of their bodies in the vast desert wilderness. Others proposed more supernatural explanations, referencing traditional Navajo stories of mysterious disappearances and entities that dwell in the darkness. Whatever the truth might be, the case remains officially unsolved, with no definitive explanation ever documented for the abandoned vehicle or the mysterious disappearance of its owners. The drag marks found in the snow remain unexplained, as does the complete absence of footprints or other evidence that might indicate what happened to the family. No trace of the missing family was ever found, though many continue to search for answers in the vast desert landscape. Officer Rachel Mitchell had been with the Navajo Nation Police Department for just over 3 years when she first encountered the phenomenon that would later be known among officers as the follower. It was October 2019, and the autumn season had painted the high desert in shades of gold, amber, and deep red. Mitchell was assigned to the night shift on Highway 264, the same stretch of road where Officer Bigay had encountered the Shadow Walker 5 years earlier. Though Mitchell had heard stories about strange encounters on this highway, she approached them with professional skepticism, attributing most to fatigue, isolation, or the natural tricks that darkness plays on the mind. The evening of October 17, 2019, began like any other autumn night in the high desert. The air was crisp and cool, with the scent of juniper and pine carried on a gentle breeze. Mitchell began her shift at 9 p.m., following her usual routine of vehicle inspection and equipment check. The first few hours of her patrol were uneventful: a routine traffic stop for a broken headlight, a response to a noise complaint in a small residential area off the main highway, and a welfare check on an elderly woman whose family hadn't heard from in 2 days. The woman was fine, merely without a working phone. By midnight, the traffic on Highway 264 had dwindled to almost nothing, leaving Mitchell alone with her thoughts and the rhythmic sound of her tires on the pavement. The moon was nearly full, casting a silver glow across the landscape and creating long shadows that danced in the periphery of her headlights. It was at approximately 1:23 a.m., while driving westbound near mile marker 42, that Mitchell first noticed the unusual light in her rearview mirror. At first, she assumed it was another vehicle's headlights, though they seemed unusually bright and white, almost blue in color. As the light drew closer, Mitchell realized it wasn't a vehicle at all, at least not any kind she was familiar with. It appeared to be a single, intensely bright orb of light that maintained a consistent distance behind her patrol car, approximately 200 yards. When Mitchell accelerated, the light accelerated, maintaining the same distance. When she slowed down, it slowed down as well, never approaching closer, never falling further behind. Mitchell radioed dispatch to report the unusual phenomenon. Dispatch, Unit 38. I have an unidentified light source following my vehicle at approximately 200 yards. It's not a vehicle, appears to be a single bright orb. Can you see anything on radar or satellite imagery? The dispatcher's response came after a brief pause. Negative, Unit 38. No aircraft reported in your area. No other vehicles on that stretch of highway. Can you describe the light in more detail? Mitchell attempted to describe what she was seeing, though words seemed inadequate to capture the strange quality of the light. For the next several miles, Mitchell continued her patrol with the mysterious light following behind her. She tried various maneuvers to identify or lose the light's sudden turns, rapid acceleration, complete stops, but nothing affected its behavior. It remained at a consistent distance, never wavering, never approaching, never leaving. Mitchell felt a growing sense of unease, though she couldn't identify any specific threat. The light was simply there, a constant presence that defied explanation. At approximately 2:15 a.m., while approaching a desolate stretch of highway known as Dead Man's Curve, Mitchell noticed something even more unusual. The light, which had been following behind her, suddenly split into two distinct orbs, both maintaining the same distance and behavior as the original. Mitchell felt her heart rate increase as she watched the two lights in her rearview mirror, perfectly synchronized in their movements. Dispatch, Unit 38. She radioed, her voice betraying a hint of the anxiety she felt. The light has split into two. I now have two identical lights following my vehicle at the same distance. The dispatcher's response was immediate. Copy that, Unit 38. Are you certain they're separate objects? Mitchell confirmed that she could now clearly see two distinct lights, though they moved in perfect synchronization, as if connected by some invisible force. I've never seen anything like this, Mitchell admitted, her professional composure beginning to crack under the strangeness of the situation. Requesting backup. I'm going to pull over at the next safe location to investigate. The next safe turnout was approximately 2 miles ahead. As Mitchell approached, she noticed that the two lights behind her suddenly merged back into one, then dimmed significantly, becoming barely visible. When she pulled into the turnout and turned off her engine, the light remained at a distance, no longer following, but simply hovering in the darkness. Mitchell stepped out of her vehicle, flashlight in hand, and approached the location where the light seemed to be hanging in the air. As she drew closer, Mitchell realized that the light wasn't actually in the air at all. It was on the ground, or very close to it. She could see now that it was emanating from a point approximately 3 feet off the ground, though there was nothing visible that could be producing such illumination. The light cast no shadows, created no heat, and made no sound. It simply existed, a silent, steady glow in the darkness of the desert night. Mitchell maintained a safe distance, documenting the phenomenon with her body camera and taking photographs with her department-issued phone. The light remained stationary for approximately 10 minutes before it suddenly ascended straight up into the air, moving rapidly until it disappeared from sight. Mitchell stood there for several moments, staring at the empty space where the light had been, trying to process what she had just witnessed. When backup arrived, Officers Daniel Benally and Susan Key found Mitchell standing alone in the turnout, her face pale but her expression determined. She recounted the experience, showing them the photographs and video she had captured. Both officers were skeptical but professional, examining the evidence without judgment. I've seen some strange things out here, Benali admitted. But nothing like this. The photos don't do it justice, or there was something almost alive about how it moved. The official incident report, filed on October 18, 2019, describes the encounter in carefully neutral language. Officer Mitchell reports observing an unidentified light phenomenon following her patrol vehicle for approximately 1 hour. The light exhibited unusual characteristics, including the ability to split into 2 separate objects and later merge back into one. The phenomenon ascended rapidly and disappeared from view at approximately 2:35 a.m. No explanation has been determined for the observed phenomenon. In the weeks that followed, Mitchell experienced 2 more encounters with similar lights while patrolling the same stretch of highway. The second encounter occurred on November 2, 2019, when she observed 3 lights in a triangular formation hovering over the desert approximately 1 mile from the highway. The lights remained visible for approximately 20 minutes before suddenly disappearing. The third encounter happened on November 15, 2019, when a single light followed her vehicle for approximately 30 minutes before vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. Mitchell documented each encounter, creating a detailed record of the phenomenon that eventually caught the attention of her superiors. Captain Joseph Charlie, a 25-year veteran of the force, reviewed her reports with interest. "We've had similar sightings over the years," he told Mitchell during a private meeting. "Most officers don't report them, concerned about how it might affect their credibility. What you've documented is consistent with other accounts, though your detailed observations and evidence are unusual." The phenomenon became known informally among officers as the follower, with some veterans admitting to having experienced similar encounters during their years on the force. Most agreed that the lights seemed to exhibit intelligence of some kind, responding to the officer's actions while maintaining a consistent and non-threatening behavior. No one could offer a definitive explanation, though theories ranged from secret military exercises to extraterrestrial visitors to something else entirely. Something that defied conventional understanding. Mitchell continued to patrol the same stretch of highway for another year before requesting a transfer to the Criminal Investigations Division. In her transfer request, she cited only a desire for professional development. Though in private conversations with trusted colleagues, she admitted that the constant uncertainty of what she might encounter on the night shift had become stressful. "I don't mind the darkness," she told a fellow officer shortly before her transfer. "It's what's in the darkness that I'm not sure I want to keep meeting." The lights of Highway 264 continue to be observed by select officers, though most now choose not to document their encounters, preferring to keep their experiences to themselves rather than face the skepticism and questions that such reports inevitably generate. The phenomenon remains officially unexplained, with the Navajo Nation Police Department maintaining that it has no definitive explanation for what officers have witnessed. No definitive explanation for the follower has ever been documented, though many who have seen it carry the memory with them always. The case that would later be referenced in departmental files as the Crossroads incident began on a clear, cold night in December 2020. Officer Samuel Wilson, a relative newcomer to the Navajo Nation Police Department with just 18 months of experience, was assigned to patrol the remote intersection of Highways 191 and 264, a desolate crossroads known locally as the place of many spirits. The intersection had long been the subject of local legends and stories, with traditional Navajo beliefs holding that such places were portals between worlds, where the veil between the physical and spiritual realms was particularly thin. Wilson began his shift at 11 p.m., the winter air crisp and cold, with temperatures hovering around 20 degrees. The sky was clear and filled with stars, the moon a mere sliver that offered little illumination to the landscape below. His briefing that evening had included a routine reminder about the intersection's reputation for unusual occurrences, though his supervisor had been quick to add that these were local superstitions that shouldn't affect his professional judgment. Wilson, who had grown up in Phoenix and was still adjusting to rural law enforcement, had nodded politely while privately dismissing such concerns as folklore. The first few hours of Wilson's shift were uneventful, a routine traffic stop for a broken taillight, a response to a minor disturbance at a convenience store in the small community of Window Rock, and a welfare check on an elderly resident whose family hadn't heard from in 2 days. The resident was fine, merely without electricity due to a winter storm. By 2 a.m., the traffic had dwindled to almost nothing, leaving Wilson alone with his thoughts and the vast expanse of the desert night. At approximately 2:47 a.m., Wilson received a call from dispatch reporting a single vehicle accident at the crossroads of highways 191 and 264. Unit 42, we have a report of a vehicle that has run off the road at the intersection of 191 and 264. Caller reports seeing headlights go off the road, then darkness. No further communication from the vehicle. Wilson acknowledged the call, noting that the intersection was approximately 10 miles from his current location. As he drove toward the scene, he felt a growing sense of unease, though he attributed this to the natural apprehension that comes with responding to a potential accident in a remote location. When Wilson arrived at the intersection, he found no signs of a vehicle accident. The roads were clear, with no skid marks, no debris, no indication that any vehicle had recently left the roadway. Wilson swept his powerful spotlight across the area, illuminating the desert landscape in all directions. Nothing. He radioed dispatch to report his findings. Dispatch, Unit 42. I'm at the intersection of 191 and 264. No signs of any accident or disabled vehicle. All clear here. As Wilson prepared to leave the area, his headlights caught something unusual at the center of the intersection, what appeared to be a figure standing motionless in the darkness. Wilson slowed his vehicle, approaching cautiously. As he drew closer, he could see that it was a woman, perhaps in her late 20s or early 30s, wearing what appeared to be traditional Navajo clothing. She stood perfectly still, facing east, with her back to Wilson's approach. Wilson felt a chill run down his spine, despite the heater running in his vehicle. "Ma'am?" Wilson called through his open window. "Are you all right? You shouldn't be standing in the middle of the road." The woman didn't respond or turn around. Wilson exited his vehicle, approaching slowly. "Ma'am, I'm with the Navajo Nation Police Department. Can you tell me what you're doing here?" As Wilson drew closer, he noticed something odd. The woman's feet didn't seem to be touching the ground, though she appeared to be standing normally in every other respect. When Wilson was approximately 10 feet from the woman, she slowly turned to face him. What he saw in that moment would haunt him for the rest of his life. The woman's face was beautiful but ancient, her eyes holding a wisdom and sadness that seemed impossible for someone so young. More disturbing was that Wilson could see through her form to the desert landscape beyond, as if she were made of smoke or mist. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice sounding like distant wind chimes. "This is not your place." Wilson felt a cold dread wash over him, unlike anything he had experienced before. "What are you?" he asked, his hand instinctively moving toward the service weapon on his belt. The woman smiled sadly. "I am what stands between worlds," she replied. "I am what guards the threshold. I am what has been forgotten by most, but remembered by a few." Wilson struggled to process what he was seeing and hearing, his rational mind rebelling against the impossibility of the situation. "The accident you were called to investigate hasn't happened yet," the woman continued, her form becoming slightly more substantial. It will happen at 3:17 a.m. A blue pickup truck traveling north on 191 will run the stop sign and be struck by a semi traveling east on 264. The driver of the pickup will die at the scene. The driver of the semi will survive, but will never be the same. Wilson felt his heart racing as he glanced at his watch. It was 2:59 a.m. "You can prevent it," the woman said, her voice growing fainter as her form began to dissipate. "But you must act quickly. The pickup will approach from the south, the semi from the west. You have less than 15 minutes. With those words, the woman vanished completely, leaving Wilson alone in the middle of the intersection, his mind racing to process what had just happened. Wilson radioed dispatch immediately. "Dispatch, Unit 42. I have credible information about an impending accident at this intersection. A blue pickup truck will approach from the south on 191. A semi will approach from the west on 264. The pickup is expected to run the stop sign at approximately 3:17 a.m., requesting immediate assistance to prevent this accident." The dispatcher's response was cautious but professional. "Copy that, Unit 42. Can you explain how you obtained this information?" Wilson hesitated for only a moment before replying, "I received it from a reliable source at the scene." 2 additional units arrived within 10 minutes. Finding Wilson standing in the middle of the intersection, directing traffic with his flashlight. At 3:15 a.m., a blue pickup truck approached from the south on Highway 191. Wilson flagged it down, explaining that there was a problem with the intersection and directing the driver to take an alternate route. The driver, a middle-aged man who appeared tired but sober, complied without argument. 2 minutes later, a semi-truck approached from the west on Highway 264. Wilson directed this driver to stop, explaining the situation. The driver, a professional trucker in his 40s, waited patiently while Wilson explained the potential danger. The official incident report, filed on December 11, 2020, describes the event in carefully neutral language. Officer Wilson received information about a potential traffic hazard at the intersection of Highways 191 and 264. Based on this information, Officer Wilson took appropriate action to prevent a possible accident. No accident occurred at this location. The source of Officer Wilson's information remains unverified. The report notes that both drivers were interviewed and confirmed that they had been experiencing fatigue and might not have noticed the stop sign in time. In the days that followed, Wilson struggled to make sense of what had happened. He knew that reporting the full truth of his encounter would likely result in professional consequences. Yet, he also felt a responsibility to document what had occurred. He eventually decided to speak with Sergeant Thomas Yazzie, a veteran officer known for his understanding of traditional Navajo beliefs and his open-minded approach to unexplained phenomena. Yazzie listened without judgment as Wilson recounted the entire experience, from the initial call about the accident to his encounter with the mysterious woman at the crossroads. When Wilson finished, Yazzie was silent for a moment before speaking. "My grandmother used to tell stories about the crossroads guardian," he said quietly. "A spirit that appears to travelers at dangerous intersections, warning them of potential accidents. She said the guardian was once a medicine woman who died protecting her family from a runaway wagon at that same intersection. Now she watches over others, preventing similar tragedies." Yazzie advised Wilson to document his experience in a personal journal rather than an official report, suggesting that the full truth might not be understood or accepted by everyone in the department. "Some things are meant to be remembered, but not necessarily explained," Yazzie said. "What matters is that you listened and acted, potentially saving lives in the process. That's good police work, regardless of how you received the information." Wilson continued to patrol the same area for another 6 months before requesting a transfer to a different district. In his transfer request, he cited only a desire for new professional challenges. Though in private conversations with trusted colleagues, he admitted that the experience had changed him profoundly. "I don't look at things the same way anymore," he told a fellow officer shortly before his transfer. "There's more to this world than what we can see and touch. Some nights, when I'm driving alone, I still wonder about that woman at the crossroads and what other mysteries might be hiding in plain sight." The Crossroads Guardian continues to be a subject of discussion among officers who patrol that area, though most approach the topic with caution, recognizing that some experiences transcend conventional explanation. The intersection of Highways 191 and 264 remains a place of mystery and reverence, a reminder that some places hold power that cannot be easily measured or categorized. No official explanation for the Crossroads Guardian has ever been documented, though many who have experienced similar encounters carry the memory with them always. The phenomenon that would later be documented in departmental files as the Memory Road began on a foggy night in September 2022. Officer James Tso, a 6-year veteran of the Navajo Nation Police Department, was assigned to patrol a remote section of Highway 564 that connected the small communities of Denahotso and Red Mesa. This particular stretch of road, known among locals as the Path of Echoes, had long been the subject of stories and legends, with traditional Navajo beliefs holding that certain places retain the memories of events that have occurred there, replaying them like ghosts in the mist. The evening of September 8, 2022, was unusually humid for the high desert, with a thick fog that reduced visibility to less than 50 feet in some areas. Tso began his shift at 10 p.m., following his usual routine of vehicle inspection and equipment check. The first few hours of his patrol were relatively quiet, a routine traffic stop for a broken headlight, a response to a minor disturbance at a residence off the main highway, and a welfare check on an elderly woman whose family hadn't heard from in 2 days. The woman was fine, merely without a working phone. By 1 a.m., the traffic on Highway 564 had dwindled to almost nothing, leaving Tso alone with his thoughts and the rhythmic sound of his tires on the wet pavement. The fog had grown thicker as the night progressed, creating an eerie, muffled atmosphere that absorbed sound and distorted perception. It was at approximately 2:15 a.m., while driving westbound near mile marker 17, that Tso first noticed the unusual phenomenon. At first, Tso thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, a common occurrence in the thick fog, where shapes and shadows seemed to take on a life of their own. But as he drove closer, he realized that what he was seeing was not a trick of the light or a product of fatigue. There, in the middle of the road ahead, was the faint but distinct image of a vehicle, an older model pickup truck, faded red in color, driving slowly in the same direction as Tso. What made this unusual was that the truck was semi-transparent, like a hologram or a mirage, allowing Tso to see the road and landscape through it as if it weren't there. Tso slowed his vehicle, maintaining a safe distance as he observed the phantom truck. It moved at a steady pace, approximately 30 miles per hour, staying in the center of its lane. As Tso watched, he noticed something even more unusual. The truck seemed to be fading in and out of visibility, becoming more distinct at times, then nearly disappearing at others. Tso radioed dispatch to report the unusual sighting. "Dispatch, Unit 63. I'm observing what appears to be a phantom vehicle on Highway 564 near mile marker 17. It's semi-transparent and fading in and out of visibility. Can you confirm any other vehicles in this area?" The dispatcher's response came after a brief pause. "Negative, Unit 63. No other vehicles reported on that stretch of highway. Are you certain about what you're seeing?" Tso confirmed that he was certain, though he acknowledged the unusual nature of his observation. "I know how this sounds," he said. "But there's definitely something here. It looks like an older red pickup truck, possibly from the 1970s or 1980s based on the design. It's driving westbound, same direction as me, at approximately 30 miles per hour." For the next several miles, Tso followed the phantom truck, documenting its behavior with his body camera and taking photographs with his department-issued phone. The truck maintained a consistent speed and position in its lane, never varying its course or speed. Tso noticed that the phantom became more distinct as they approached certain landmarks, a particular curve in the road, a distinctive rock formation, a specific mile marker, then faded again as they moved past these locations. At approximately 2:45 a.m., while approaching a narrow bridge over a dry wash, Tso noticed that the phantom truck became particularly distinct, almost solid in appearance. As they reached the center of the bridge, the phantom truck suddenly swerved sharply, as if avoiding something in the road, then seemed to lose control, sliding sideways before crashing through the guardrail and disappearing into the darkness below. Tso slammed on his brakes, stopping his vehicle and exiting quickly to investigate. When Tso reached the location where the phantom truck had crashed through the guardrail, he found something disturbing. And the guardrail was indeed bent and broken, exactly as if a vehicle had recently crashed through it. However, there were no tire tracks, no debris, no signs of any actual accident. Tso swept his flashlight beam over the area below the bridge, finding only rocks and desert vegetation. He radioed dispatch immediately. "Dispatch, Unit 63. The phantom vehicle I was following appeared to crash through the guardrail at the bridge over Dry Wash Creek, near mile marker 23. The guardrail is damaged, but there are no signs of an actual vehicle or accident. Requesting assistance to investigate." 2 additional units arrived within 20 minutes, finding Tso standing by the damaged guardrail, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. Officers Daniel Benally and Susan Key examined the scene, finding the same puzzling evidence, a clearly damaged guardrail with no indication of what might have caused it. "I've seen some strange things out here," Benally admitted, "but nothing like this. It's as if we're seeing the memory of something that happened here, like the road is replaying an old accident." The official incident report filed on September 9, 2022, describes the encounter in carefully neutral language. Officer Tso reports observing an unidentified vehicle phenomenon on Highway 564. The vehicle appeared to be semi-transparent and eventually crashed through a guardrail near mile marker 23. The guardrail was indeed damaged, though no evidence of an actual vehicle or accident was found. No explanation has been determined for the observed phenomenon. In the days that followed, Tso conducted some research into the history of that particular stretch of highway, hoping to find some explanation for what he had witnessed. What he discovered was both fascinating and unsettling. According to old newspaper archives and department records, a fatal accident had occurred at that exact location on September 8, 1978, 44 years to the day before Tso's encounter. A young man driving a red pickup truck had lost control on the bridge and crashed through the guardrail, dying at the scene. The circumstances of the accident were remarkably similar to what Tso had witnessed with the phantom vehicle. Tso also discovered that other officers had reported similar encounters on that stretch of highway over the years, though most had chosen not to document their experiences, concerned about how they might be perceived. The phenomenon became known informally among officers as the Memory Road, with some veterans admitting to having experienced similar encounters during their years on the force. Most agreed that certain sections of the highway seemed to retain the memories of significant events, replaying them like ghosts in the fog or darkness. Sergeant Thomas Yazzie, a veteran officer with deep knowledge of traditional Navajo beliefs, offered a possible explanation when Tso shared his research with him. My grandmother used to say that some places hold the energy of what has happened there, Yazzie said quietly. Especially places where strong emotions were experienced: fear, pain, love, loss. She said that on certain nights, when the conditions are right, these places might show us what they remember, not as ghosts, but as echoes of what once was. The road remembers, even if we have forgotten. So continued to patrol the same stretch of highway for another year, experiencing 2 more encounters with the memory road during that time. The second encounter occurred on November 2nd, 2022, when he witnessed the faint image of a family walking along the shoulder of the road, their clothing and appearance suggesting an earlier era. The third encounter happened on January 15th, 2023, when he saw what appeared to be a herd of horses crossing the highway, though no actual horses were present and no tracks were left behind. So documented each encounter, creating a detailed record of the phenomenon that eventually became part of the unofficial history of the Navajo Nation Police Department. Most officers who patrolled that stretch of highway had experienced something similar, though few spoke of it openly. Recognizing that some phenomena defied conventional explanation and were better understood through experience than through reports, the memory road continues to reveal its echoes to select officers, though most now approach such encounters with a sense of reverence rather than fear, recognizing them as reminders that the landscape holds stories and memories that transcend the boundaries of time and space. The phenomenon remains officially unexplained, with the Navajo Nation Police Department maintaining that it has no definitive explanation for what officers have witnessed. No definitive explanation for the memory road has ever been documented, though many who have experienced it carry the memory with them always. The American landscape remains vast and unknowable, especially across the expansive territories of the Navajo Nation, where ancient traditions meet modern law enforcement. The 7 accounts we've explored tonight represent only a fraction of the unexplained phenomena documented by Navajo Highway Patrol officers over the decades. Each story, verified through official reports and witness testimony, speaks to the mysterious nature of the desert highways that cut through this sacred land. What connects these encounters is not just their occurrence along the same network of roads, but the profound impact they've had on those who experience them. From Officer Begay's Shadow Walker to Officer Martinez's Whispering Highway, each phenomenon challenged the officers' understanding of reality, forcing them to confront possibilities that extended beyond their training and experience. Yet, in each case, the officers responded with professionalism and courage, documenting what they had witnessed even when it defied easy explanation. The Navajo Nation Police Department has developed a unique approach to such encounters over the years, one that balances the need for official documentation with an understanding that some phenomena transcend conventional explanation. Many officers now choose to keep their experiences to themselves or share them only with trusted colleagues, recognizing that some mysteries are better understood through personal experience than through official reports. This approach reflects a broader cultural wisdom that acknowledges the limitations of human understanding while remaining open to the possibilities that exist beyond our perception. The highways that traverse the Navajo Nation are more than mere transportation corridors. They are pathways through a landscape rich with history, tradition, and spiritual significance. They connect communities, but they also connect the present to the past, the physical world to the spiritual realm. The encounters we've explored tonight suggest that these highways sometimes serve as conduits for phenomena that defy our understanding of time, space, and reality itself. They remind us that the world is more mysterious and complex than we often acknowledge, and that some things exist beyond the boundaries of what we can prove or explain. What makes these encounters particularly compelling is their consistency across different officers, different times, and different locations along the same network of highways. The Shadow Walker, the Whispering Highway, the Memory Road. These phenomena have been experienced by multiple officers over many years, creating a body of evidence that suggests something more than mere imagination or misinterpretation. They represent a pattern of unexplained experiences that continues to this day, with new officers occasionally reporting similar encounters as they patrol the same desolate stretches of highway. The traditional Navajo worldview offers a framework for understanding such phenomena that differs from conventional Western approaches. Rather than seeking to explain or dismiss these encounters, traditional Navajo thought often acknowledges them as part of the complex web of relationships between humans, nature, and the spiritual world. This perspective allows for a more nuanced understanding of unexplained phenomena, one that recognizes their significance without necessarily requiring scientific proof or explanation. For the officers who patrol these highways, such encounters represent both a challenge and an opportunity. A challenge to their professional training and personal beliefs, and an opportunity to expand their understanding of the world and their place in it. Many have found that these experiences, while unsettling, have also enriched their lives and deepened their connection to the land and its traditions. They speak of a heightened awareness, a greater sensitivity to the subtle energies of the landscape, and a deeper respect for the mysteries that exist beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding. The endless miles of highway that crisscross the Navajo Nation continue to hold their secrets, revealing them only to select officers under specific conditions. The phenomena we've explored tonight, the Shadow Walker, the voice on the radio, the vanishing hitchhiker, the empty vehicle, the light that follows, the crossroads guardian, the whispering highway, and the memory road remain part of the oral tradition of the Navajo Nation Police Department, passed from one generation of officers to the next like cautionary tales or sacred teachings. What these stories ultimately remind us is that the world is more mysterious and complex than we often acknowledge. They speak to the possibility that there are forces at work in the universe that we don't fully understand, phenomena that exist beyond the boundaries of what we can prove or explain. They challenge us to remain open to the possibility that there might be more to reality than what we can perceive with our limited senses and understand with our limited knowledge. If you or someone you know has a true story to share about unexplained encounters along the highways of the American Southwest, leave it in the comments below. Your experiences help build a more complete picture of these phenomena and contribute to our collective understanding of the mysteries that surround us. The Navajo Highway Patrol continues its patrols night after night, serving as the thin blue line between civilization and the vast, mysterious wilderness of the desert. Some officers now approach their duties with a heightened awareness, recognizing that they might encounter more than just stranded motorists and traffic violations on their shifts. They remain professional and committed to their duties, but with an added dimension of respect for the unknown possibilities that exist in the darkness. The endless miles of highway continue to hold their secrets, revealing them only when conditions are right and only to those who are open to receiving them. The stories we've shared tonight represent only a fraction of the unexplained phenomena documented by Navajo Highway Patrol officers over the decades. Many more remain untold, held in the memories and experience logs of those who have witnessed them. Thank you for watching Sleepless Campfire. Until next time, stay safe out there.